Ashlyn.
I'm Elle.
We are Vie Cosplay.
And this is Shit Cosplayers Say.
Thank you so much for joining us for another fun adventure in Season 2.
It is currently March, because as you know, we are recording in advance as part of our self-care with this podcast.
We're adulting.
We are trying to adult, let's be honest.
I need an adultier adult.
Yes, that's very accurate. I don't feel like I'm quite adult enough to discuss this today, but we're going to try. Because I'm lay tired. So back in March, I did a panel for NakaCon, which we talked about in the first episode of Season 2, on self-care. And we decided to do an episode version of this panel. It's not everything that I talked about, because actually how I did this panel was I put up a list of topics and I let the audience pick what topics we were going to talk about for the hour. So there's a lot that goes into this, so we're not covering everything, because this would be an extremely long episode. Yes, you get the more specific topics related to self-care and motivation in this episode. This honestly was inspired by all of the questions I've seen online in various forums asking, how do you get motivation? Because I don't have any.
I've noticed that there's people on either side of the spectrum right now. You've got the people that are totally like kicking ass and taking names. And then you have the other people that are like, there's no cons. I can't do the thing.
I'm definitely one of those people where there are no cons and I have a really hard time doing the thing.
You are not alone.
I know. Most of our friends are in that boat of there are no cons and so I cannot do the thing.
I totally applaud those of you that are doing the kick-ass take name part, because I enjoy your posts tremendously. They give me hope for the future.
But ultimately, it comes down to understanding what you can handle, and that's kind of one of the things we're going to talk about today, because we are going to talk about self-care.
Well, and I think the important thing, like you mentioned, for knowing what you can handle is that you are not everybody else. So what your expectations and limitations and needs are in terms of self-care and cosplay and life in general are going to be drastically different than somebody else and what their circumstances might bring. And that's okay.
So please know that I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go exercise, run, and do yoga.
But what if I want to?
If you want to, that's great. And that can be part of your self-care. But I'm not going to... So the thing that always cracks me up about, like, self-care presentations is that that's almost always where they go. Is do some yoga for 20 minutes a day.
Drink more water.
And then run multiple miles. Go to the gym. It will make you feel great. I only run if something's chasing me. Like, that is not part of my self-care.
Now the new self-care things are going to tell you to have nature cereal as part of your self-care routine.
Oh, really?
Yes. Have you seen those?
No.
It's a new trend. It's a new food trend popping around on the socials right now. So at this point, when this airs, it's going to be a couple months old. But essentially, it's like frozen fruit and chips of ice served in coconut water.
No, thank you.
And they call it nature cereal.
No.
And I was like, what is this? I mean, I'll eat frozen fruit sometimes when it's really hot outside. But...
well...
I call it frozen fruit because that's what it is.
I mean, you do you. If that's what floats your boat, you know.
It just really entertained me.
Because, I mean, that is entertaining. I mean, self-care really is largely about whatever floats your boat. Because that's essentially what you're trying to do, is keep your boat afloat.
Yep, and not blocking the Suez Canal.
And not blocking the Suez Canal. Yes.
My canal's
Don't
been
do
blocked
that.
for like a year.
That's like when you just, you block yourself off from being able to care for yourself, and now you're stuck.
Yep.
It's a metaphor.
$400 million a day. Or no,
$400 million a day.
$400 million an hour. Sorry.
Maybe that's all the therapy you need if you don't do your self-care.
It's $400 billion an hour.
We're not that expensive.
Well, that's good. We're also not licensed in your state to provide this type of therapy.
No, I'm not. But I am licensed to provide services regarding self-care. However, as I will have put in the description of the episode, this episode is not intended to diagnose or treat any disorder, illness, or condition. Because I don't want to get in trouble. So you've been warned. I'm not diagnosing or treating any of you for anything. We are just sharing our experiences with you so that you can learn and grow. So, what is self-care? Well, the World Health Organization has the actual definition, which is the ability of individuals, families, and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a healthcare provider. Now, that's a lot of words that don't mean a whole lot of things, basically. So, the actual concept of self-care is really broad. It includes hygiene, it includes nutrition, lifestyle, environmental factors, socioeconomic factors, and then, your health and your wellness. So ideally, what you want self-care to be is something that helps you be well, whatever that may be. And you don't want it to be extra work, which is why I laugh about going to the gym, because I am not someone who can do that. I know some people, they live off of running, but it's just not my thing.
Well, it reminds me of a lot of the stuff that I've seen going around, where there's a popular concept, and now of course the name's going to escape me, where if you get the motivation to buy something that you need for your self-care, but then you don't have the motivation past that to do anything with it, then you're actually indebted to the process, because now you're wasting money by buying fresh fruits and vegetables or vitamin tablets. Whereas if you would have bought maybe pre-cut carrots instead of whole carrots, you would have eaten them. But then you don't want to clean and cut the carrots so they go bad. Or you don't want to take the vitamin tablets because you don't particularly like vitamin tablets. But you would have bought the gummies, which are a little bit more expensive, and actually taken those because they're like fruit snacks. So, yeah.
Well, and that kind of goes with something we're going to talk about in a little bit, but it's understanding your amount of energy that you have and what is going to make you more or less successful. Because I am definitely the person who is more likely to eat the cut up carrots than the ones that aren't, because I'm going to lose the motivation to actually finish the task. Because my ADHD is going to go, bye-bye. I mean, it's not going to happen. I have to have things out so I can see them. That also goes, a lot of people will buy a lot of fancy things for self-care, and then it's too much work to actually do it. So, the famous one is always, a fancy bath. You know how much work that is? That's not always relaxing. That's, a lot of work.
I don't usually do a fancy bath unless I can dedicate, at least an hour to it, because it takes too much time and energy to set up.
Well, and so what happens sometimes is people only think of those things that you stereotypically know as self-care. So, fancy bath, exercising, yoga. It's the stereotype of what we think we're supposed to do for self-care, but self-care doesn't actually have to be that complicated, because it can be a lot of small things that you do for yourself, and almost giving yourself permission to maybe not do what is expected in order for you to have that time to recharge so that you can continue in the occupations in your life. So it's kind of that, similar to the concept of work-life balance, and finding the balance between what you need to do and what you also need to do to recharge so you can do those other things. Which is hard in a pandemic, we all know.
Yeah. My big one that I found that works for me is not washing my hair. So I'm not going anywhere anyway. So my hair is up in a messy bun constantly. regardless, because I don't need to impress anybody. Like, I'm sitting in my house. I don't need to impress anybody. So, and I've already been told by, like, my stylist that, you know, back when I had one of those, before, you know, we were stuck at home without those things, not to wash my hair every day anyway, but I still find that I need a daily shower, or else I just don't function quite as properly. But if I don't wash my hair, I can do that in just like 5 minutes to get in, scrub down with a nice smelling body wash with a loofah, get exfoliated, and then rinse off with scalding hot water and feel like 10 times better. So like 5 minutes in the water and then maybe 5 to 10 minutes to just kind of relax and get back into dressed adult mode after that. And it cuts down on the time it takes for me to take a shower. And then my day's just immediately better. Whereas if I had to wash my hair, it would just be like a huge whole ordeal, because then I either have to deal with it being wet, which is its own kind of downer, or I have to put in all the effort to dry it and then straighten it, because I can't dry it and then not straighten it because my hair just won't let me.
I do something kind of similar, but with my dishwasher. So I've been kind of busy lately, and with the dishes, you know, you could wait until everything is completely and totally packed in there and then run it, or, you know, maybe you should wash certain things by hand, but right now they're not getting done if I try to do that. So I'm just loading the dishwasher and running it, and if I have to run it every day, oh well. Like right now I don't care because it needs to get done. And that gives me more time to put energy other places, because I'm not putting it into trying to keep these dishes going in the most, you know, quote unquote effective way.
Yeah, because then you get that like weird balance of like, oh, well, I have more things that need to go on the top than really need to go on the bottom. So do I wait for the bottom to get full? But then I have the hand wash stuff that would go on the top because there's not enough room on the top rack for it. And it just takes a lot of your mental capacity to even think about, let alone do anything about it. Versus, like you said, if I'm like, oh, well, it's today, I'm just going to run this, like, after dinner or after breakfast, depending on how your day goes, or just at whatever point in the day it's most convenient for you. Like, I'm just going to put the soap in and turn it on. Well, your dishes are clean. That's the important part.
I'm still working on not getting stuck on having to unload it then, though. That's still been a problem, because then I have to unload it.
So the thing that I found is kind of like an in-between, for me in terms of dishes anyway, is that I will unload it not dry and put it away, because when I take mine out of the dishwasher, they're usually still wet, at least some of them. So I actually have a strainer sitting on my countertop, and then like 1 or 2 towels set off to the side. So I will actually take all of the stuff out that's clean. If it is dry, I'll go ahead and put it back in the cabinet. But if it's not, or if I just don't feel like putting anything in the cabinet, I'll put it in the strainer instead. And then it's clean and out of the dishwasher. So I'm free to reload the dishwasher at my discretion. And if I need a dish, there's a really good chance it's already sitting on the countertop and I can just grab it. And I don't have to go look for it. And if I happen to get like an extra burst of energy or an inkling, I can put some or all of those dishes away just during one of my random trips to the kitchen. And if I don't want to, then I'll probably end up using them again in the next day or so.
I'm working on making unloading it part of my routine, which we'll talk about how routines help take care of some of those choices as well. But this trying to find a balance with the energy that you have for tasks goes with the ever-popular spoon theory. So when I talk about this in person, I actually bring spoons, and I do the activity for you all. So if we ever get to do one of these panels in person again, I'll actually demonstrate the activity that the theory is based on. But to give credit where credit is due, the theory was developed by Christine Miserandino in her essay in 2003 entitled Spoon Theory in Relation to Chronic Illness. So she actually developed this while she was helping a friend understand why her friend's lupus was affecting her ability to function and keep up with the expectations of society. Because it's also good to note that in general, at least in the United States, a lot of the expectations that we set upon people, especially in terms of what they should get done within a 24-hour day, is not necessarily the most realistic for most people, whether you have a condition, illness, or not. It's a lot. Like, our working environment in particular wasn't designed for everyone to work 40 hours a week and have no one home helping to take care of things, or actually more than 40 hours a week, most of us now. You know, that's not really conducive to taking care of the rest of you if a large portion of your time is dedicated to one thing. So she was trying to explain to her friend, look, like, the expectations that are put on you, what your body is capable of doing, and your ability to function are all related to each other. And she set out 12 spoons. And so I'll put a graphic as to how this works in the Instagram post. But basically, different tasks are going to require a different amount of spoons, which relates to mental and physical energy. So the more energy needed, the more spoons are going to be required. So think about it in terms of a silverware drawer. Everyone has a certain number of spoons in their drawer. Not everybody has the same number of spoons in their silverware drawer. I'm sure I have a different number of spoons than Ash has in her silverware drawer at her house. Unless, like, everybody has a perfect set of 12 spoons, but no one has that. Everyone has, like, those weird spoons that don't go with anything that are also in their drawer. How you divide your spoons is going to be dependent upon a bunch of different factors, including whether or not you have a chronic illness or lack thereof, whether or not you have something major going on in your life, whether or not there's a pandemic, because a pandemic sucks a bunch of your energy out because you are in constant fight or flight. So that makes everything take a lot longer and take a lot more energy to do. How they usually will illustrate this is certain things like maybe taking a shower or getting something out of the fridge to eat would be a lower number of spoons on a normal day. And then it might level up to, you know, you need to go to the store. And then it might level up to you need to go to work or to school. You know, work and school have more complex demands than a shower. And so in theory, they would take more energy than a shower. That doesn't mean, however, that on one day your shower might take 2 spoons, and on another day it might take like 6. Because if you're depressed, something like a shower could take half your spoons. But that's sort of how this theory works, and I found it works really well to illustrate how your physical and mental energy get zapped by everyday things. And so then self-care essentially is how you wash your spoons. So you're going to run out of spoons in that drawer. At some point, you're going to use them all up. And they're going to be gone. And then you need to wash them. No, you cannot go to Walmart and buy a box of $1 spoons. That doesn't work. Someone always asks me that in a panel. Can they go to the store and buy plastic disposable spoons? No. That's like caffeine. That's like taking like caffeine and stimulants to try to it's artificially keeping yourself going. In the long run, that's not going to work. You're still going to run out. So instead, you want to be able to wash your spoons, which means finding what is going to be part of your self-care. And now we're back to washing the dishes again. It all comes full circle, and using the dishwasher is part of my self-care because I never want to go back to not having a dishwasher ever again.
Now we're back to washing the dish. It all comes full circle. And there are things that are kind of like work that can be considered self-care. Like, I love the feeling of clean sheets. And so if I have a clean, especially the fitted sheet, if I have a clean fitted sheet, like, it's just like instant better if I'm laying in bed with it versus even like a day old sheet. So if I absolutely need something like that just to like feel a little refresher, maybe a nap on a clean sheet is really going to do it for me. Knowing that I don't have to do the dishes because they're already done gives me a little sense of, hey, I'm doing really good today. Taking my shower is a really great little recharge for me. And some things will take spoons to complete initially, but you might still be able to get spoons back from them. If I don't have the 6 from your example spoons to take my shower, I'm not going to be able to get that far.
Well, and the thing with the sheets is, yes, putting on a sheet is work, but the result of doing so has a high enough reward that you have the motivation to make the choice to follow through with the task, to put the sheet on. So how on earth does this connect to cosplay? Right? I know, I don't have enough spoons for cosplay either. So, I love that this is supposed to be a hobby, and a hobby should essentially be part of your self-care. But I find that cosplay has this weird circle of, like, self-care and then problem. Self-care, problem. Where it, like, eats all your spoons, but it's supposed to help you recharge your spoons. And then you get in this vicious cycle of, I don't have the energy to do my hobby that is supposed to be refreshing me. That's not going to solve this problem.
Conundrum.
I've been thinking about it since, we've been in this pandemic for over a year now. And, at first a lot of us were kind of beating ourselves up because we weren't getting a bunch of cosplay done. And I was doing the same thing, and I eventually had to get to a point where it's like, you know what, I have to accept what I can do and not what I think I should be doing. So it's kind of like in normal circumstances, maybe I would do things in a certain more logical order, but I might not have energy for that order. I've been referring to this process as do the beads first, because typically we would tell you, don't do your details before your base costume is done. However, right now with Hinoto, because I have a lot going on, I'm switching jobs and things are just a little bit crazy, I haven't had the energy and mental capacity to sit down and do like flat felted seams and pattern, but I do have the energy to put a stupid amount of beads on the end of these sleeves. And so that eventually, because beading actually helps relax me, it is a self-care task that I do. I decided, you know what, normally I would never do this, but I'm going to bead her sleeves now. So although it doesn't make sense, it's still better than doing nothing.
Well, because doing any part of it is better than doing none of it. Yeah, my big thing that I have the inclination to actually work on right now is starting to play with, like, props of jewelry that I know that I'm going to need eventually. I have zero desire. I love sewing, don't get me wrong. Like, sewing's my jam. But I have zero desire to do anything with fabric right now. I have no desire to stitch in a zipper, in a jacket that I've needed to fix forever. I have no desire to fix the hoodie that the pocket's coming up on. I have no desire to cut out patterns and stitch things together or fit anything or even really like look at fabric swatches that have been sitting on my desk for 3 weeks. I don't want to. I do have the desire to play with EVA foam. Never really done it before. Think it could be fun.
Well, that's kind of the whole finding the balance in what's going to work for you at the energy level that you are currently at. But that can take a while to figure out, as it did for me, because I was fighting myself to work on the things that would be logical to work on first, and I eventually just had to give myself permission to let go of what would be expected and choose the unexpected option, which has resulted in more progress. And we're going to talk a little bit about some things that I'm going to be doing with Hinoto as part of this development of motivation. Because everybody's kind of like, how do I gain motivation? Well, part of the problem is you don't really gain motivation. Motivation's not a choice necessarily. You're either motivated to do the thing or you're not. So it's one of those where, like, you might have motivation, but what you're actually missing is volition. And so we think about it as motivation, but what you're actually missing is volition, which is the process of deciding and committing to a particular task. So you may be motivated to be like, I really want to finish this, and it's going to be great, but I don't know how to commit to doing this task. And that's where the volition portion comes in. And volition and motivation have to work really closely together. I'm not going to get too into the science of all of this, but it's part of the model of human occupation, which is an occupational therapy frame of reference that essentially goes through the relationship between habits, roles, routines, volition, and motivation. And, you know, sometimes people like to use volition and motivation interchangeably, but they're not quite the same thing. A lot of times you want to do the thing, but you don't know how to start making the thing happen. We want the thing. How do we do the thing? I don't have enough of my own, like, push forward adrenaline because I don't have that con to motivate me to just do the thing. Right? Not even needing to make it's made the decision for you. Like, that's why part of why Concrunch is so popular. That date makes the decision for you. That adrenaline that you get from Concrunch is making the decision for you. But is it necessarily like, are you making a conscious choice? Sort of, but it's almost like your hand's being forced at that point. So in the situation we're in right now, you have to make more of a conscious choice or decision to move forward with a task. And so it's like, well, I don't have enough natural motivation to push myself forward. So you know you want to do the thing, but you don't know how to do the thing. Well, how you start to do the thing is you have to form a routine. And this is going to sound a lot like what they do with kiddos, but it doesn't matter how old you are, routines work most of the time if you can find one that works for you. So like for Hinoto, I've not been very good at getting much done with her. And I'm trying to establish a routine on the weekend where maybe 10 minutes on Saturday and 10 minutes on Sunday, I get something done on this costume. That isn't the beads, something else. That's where I would like to start. So at first, I'm going to have to build that in as a routine. I'm going to have to pick a time. I'm probably going to have to use a timer. I'm probably going to have to use something that reminds me, oh, it's time to go do the thing. And then set the timer so that I stay with the thing and don't get distracted because ADHD. ADHDers in particular have a really hard time with motivation because our brains get distracted really easily. So this process of establishing and building routine works really well if you have attention deficits or executive dysfunction because it compensates for some of that lack of natural motivation and ability to stay with the task. So if you are able to stick with this idea, so if I'm able to stick with working on Hinoto on Saturday and Sunday for 10 minutes, eventually I'm going to start automatically going to that task during that time of day and sticking with it for that amount of time. And I will need less reminders, and pretty soon it'll just become part of my weekend, which then forms a habit. So you build a routine to then build a habit, which then changes your outcome. So if you've built this little bit of progress as a habit, now I'm getting 20 minutes a week done on this costume as opposed to 0. And it may not seem like a lot, But when you add that up over time, it's better than 0. If it fits within where my mental capacity is and that routine has been working for me, there's no downside because you have progress. Now, it's not usually that simple, though, at routines. I'm going to be honest. As an OT, we work with people to develop routines all the time. That's a very common practice, and it's a lot of trial and error. So you may set your goal and make your plan and do it, and then have to go back and change some parts of that routine until you get something that seems to jive. And then you continue to try it out. And you'll have to, this isn't going to happen in 2 weekends I'm going to have this habit. No. Habits take a while. You have to give it time. You have to stick with it when you don't want to. That's the other part of building a routine. If you've decided that at 10 o'clock on Saturday for 10 minutes, I'm going to work on this project, and then you're like, I don't feel like it. Well, yeah, then your routine's not going to work. You have to, it starts out with almost forcing yourself to do it until it becomes a more natural part of your daily life. Now, if it doesn't seem to feel like it fits after a while, then that routine is probably not the right routine for you, and you need to change it up.
Maybe 10 o'clock doesn't work, but 8 o'clock would work better. Maybe 10 minutes is too much in the beginning, and you need to start with 5.
Right. Like, we have unintentionally established a routine that it will probably eventually form a habit where we are now typically choosing to record during the week after the hour of 7 p.m. Because that routine has been working for us. And so eventually, if we find a particular day, then it may end up becoming a habit that's just when we book things. Because it is fitting into our lives. And so that routine that we're starting to build is working its way through. All on its natural own. Magic. But I want you all to know that we've been recording this podcast since February of 2020, and we're just starting to establish a routine. We had one going for a while where we recorded on Sunday mornings. Mm-hmm. For a little while.
But then that didn't work for a while. And then we went on hiatus. And now we're getting into whatever the new normal of our routine is going to be.
Right. Because now we have... Yes. Because we have other things to work around. Because my work schedule is different. And our third co-host has his own schedule.
Yes. He does.
He establishes your routine right now that may or may not form a habit that you want. Babies are really bad about forming habits that we don't want them to have. I work with parents on that sometimes. It's a little rough. So if you want to start building a routine so you can start getting things done. And this also goes for self-care. So if you want to build self-care into your daily routine, you have to make a choice. So it's that volition, deciding to do the task. And, self-care can be something really simple. Like, you're going to give yourself 5 minutes to scroll on the TikTok. It could be self-care. It depends on what's on your TikTok, really. You might get therapized on your TikTok. That happens a lot. Maybe you're just going to give yourself a few minutes to sit in the car before you go in the house after work or before you go into work.
I actually found that as a really good self-care routine when I was freshly out of college. And that was that I did not allow myself on the internet in the morning until after I got to work. And I would get up and I would go about my morning routine as far as, eating and brushing my teeth and all that, getting dressed and going to work. And then whatever extra time I had then, I got as my internet distraction time on my phone to check Facebook, read emails, what have you, read news articles. Whereas before that, it was negatively impacting me because I would want to get on the computer first, and then I would either skip something in my normal routine that I needed for the day, like maybe I skip breakfast, or maybe I didn't wash my hair when I should have, or didn't really put any thought into my outfit. Whatever example you want to use for, I should have done this, didn't function as a normal adult, but I didn't. Or maybe I forgot to pack a lunch because I didn't have time, because I spent too much time dinking around on Facebook. Well, that still got me my internet time in, but it was no longer negatively impacting my life because I decided to move that particular part of my day elsewhere.
It's like sometimes it's just the simple choices that you make.
Don't get me wrong, it was hard because I was.
Oh, I'm sure.
I was totally an internet junkie. So me not getting up and immediately playing on my computer while I was drinking coffee or eating cereal, I didn't like it. But I had to make the conscious choice to not do that. And then I still got my fun time in the morning, and I had less stress.
This morning when I got up early, so I would get things done, but I actually got on the computer first, and then I didn't get anything done. It's a habit that I need to break if I want to be able to do things in the morning before I go to work. Well, and I want to remind everyone to still be kind to yourself. We are still in the aftermaths or current maths or what have you. I don't know what it will look like in May at this point, but I'm assuming not much different than it does now. This has been a rough period in the world, so don't beat yourself up thinking you need to have a bunch of routines to get things done. Don't try to pile on a bunch of different things at once. Just pick one thing for a short period of time that you want to put into your routine. And once that works, then you can expand upon it. But start small. And then let it grow. Because I don't got room for the small right now. And I'm sure a lot of you only have room for the small things as well. In our lovely adventure without our adrenaline rush from ConCrunch.
We're going to see, because currently all the cons are still question mark.
Yep. As of end of March, everything is still, huh?
Huh?
Which has drastically disrupted our routine.
Of ConCrunch.
Of ConCrunch, of attending certain events,
It is. But yeah, be nice to yourself. You've been through a lot, even if you don't think that you've been through a lot. Even if you're still working full-time and you didn't get disrupted at your place of employment, even if you didn't get disrupted with your housing or with illness for yourself or somebody close to you, you've still been through a lot in the last year.
I mean, as we talked about in the imposter syndrome episode, you are experiencing a loss. And the loss of a major part of your life, if you were a big con goer and a cosplayer, and it's a big loss. It's a loss of community. It's a loss of belonging. It's a loss of social interaction. It's a lot. It's a big chunk that's missing. And it's unfortunately still being forced to be missing. So, don't push yourself too hard. If your costume doesn't get done, the world is not going to end. That's definitely something I have learned over all of this. I think my big takeaway from this pandemic is if it's not done, it's not done. But cons have been taken away from me for over a year now. I am never again spending an entire convention day in the hotel room making a costume. Like, I have now had all those experiences taken from me, and I am not wasting that experience sitting in a hotel room putting a costume together.
Good.
It's also really bad for your self-care.
Oh, it's terrible for your self-care.
It's so bad. We'll do a whole Con Crunch thing, I think, at some point, because I do get a lot of questions about Con Crunch and how it functions and why it functions the way that it does. And we've gone into it a little bit. That might actually be a fun one to have the psych professors return.
Yes.
Would be to discuss the why Con Crunch. Why do we do this to ourselves? Because Con Crunch is basically the opposite of self-care. They're polar opposites. They don't get along. It's not good for you. It's so bad for you. But we all do it anyway because we use that urgency to motivate us to complete our work. But instead, you could choose to make a decision to participate in a task without involving a high adrenaline rush from Con Crunch and not sleeping for like 3 days.
Which is also terrible for you.
It's so bad for you. I don't Con Crunch well, as Ash knows. I just go, I'm done, and I go to sleep. I hit a wall and I just go, I want to sleep now, and I just go to bed.
Usually, I can tell, and sometimes I'll have to do it even if we're not in like a mode. If I'm in one of those like zones where I'm doing a lot of sewing and it's like late and I haven't gotten a ton of sleep, maybe not even like that day, but over like several days, and I've just been pushing it too much, I'll get to a point and then I'll like make a mistake and I'll be like, all right, that means I'm done. It can be really little, like takes like 2 seconds with a seam ripper to fix it or what have you, but I'm like, nope, I have hit this wall, I'm stopping, I'm gonna take 3 steps back and we're gonna come back to this later.
Well, that's kind of the wall I'll hit too. I just hit it a lot earlier than you do usually. Where I'm like, nope, if I keep working on stuff, I'm just going to screw it up. I'm going to go sleep. You also have the ability to get into one of those like hyper-focus zones though, where you can work for like hours at a time. Where I can't work on one thing for that long of a period of time.
That was previously something I was able to do. I don't know how much I'll be able to do that anymore.
We might be too old for that now.
Well, and I think third co-host is going to have something to say about that.
Well, yeah, I don't think he's going to let you do that.
I'm going to be forced
He'd have something to say about it.
And make the conscious effort, the conscious choice to do the thing. Because otherwise it won't get done.
So our choice for 2021 is going to be that we're going to make the conscious effort to do the thing instead of trying to rely on motivation to make us do the thing.
Yep. So if we happen to get like a costume done between now and the end of the year, then go us.
I mean, I still think that's possible. I think for myself, once my stress levels go down, my ability to create should go back up. So ideally, with some of the choices that I have made in terms of my self-care, if they were the correct choices, theoretically my creativity should go up because my stress levels should go down. Because I am not a creative person if my stress levels are high. So some people thrive in that stress zone. I don't. I just sleep. I just go sleep for days.
Well, we definitely hope that you were able to take some things out of this. Like I said, be kind to yourself. And we hope that maybe you'll be able to brainstorm on some choices to to try out that'll be good for you and for your self-care going forward. Whether or not it's cosplay related or just in your regular life. I mean, like Elle said, cosplay for most people is a hobby, and it should be a good recharge and it should be fun. So if you're finding yourself stressing about it, it's natural given the circumstances, but maybe these tips will kind of help you get to where you want to be. I'm Ash.
I'm Elle.
We are Vie Cosplay.
And this is Shit Cosplayers Say. You've been listening to Shit Cosplayers Say, an LVC production. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Podcast SCS. Our website is lavicosplay.com. Have a fun, crazy con or cosplay-related story, absurd cosplay question, or just something in general to share with us? Email us at podcastscs@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, just because you can doesn't mean you should.